Hi everyone, welcome back to Media and Information Literacy. For our fifth lesson, we will be talking about media and information languages. For today's lesson, we will be relating language and media. We'll also be discussing what media language is, the different media codes, conventions, and messages, as well as producers, stakeholders, and audience in media. Before we proceed with discussing language in media, let us first define what language is. According to Finocchiaro, cited in Zhang in 2010, language is a system of arbitrary vocal symbols that permit all people in a given culture or other people who have learned the system of that culture to communicate or to interact. Simply put, language is essential in communication. Now, how are we going to relate this to media studies? How is language defined and used in media? Language in media pertains to the technical and symbolic ingredients or codes and conventions that media and information professionals may select and use in an effort to communicate ideas, information, and knowledge. Now, in media, it is not just the words that are communicating. It is not just simply the verbal form of communication. There are other symbolic and technical ingredients that are present in different media products. Media languages, therefore, is described as the codes, conventions, formats, symbols, and narrative structures that indicate the meaning of media messages to an audience. It is what helps you understand the intention, the meaning behind different media formats, because that is what the producers of that particular media output wants you to feel, to understand, to interpret, or to learn from that particular media product. Media language also denotes how media producers make meaning about a certain medium they are producing and how they transfer that meaning to their target audience. Again, it is what they intend to do in order for you to understand or even feel what they want you to feel about that particular product. Similarly, it also allows the audience to convey the meaning of the text through its signs and symbols. Media language could also be interpreted in the same way that we interpret regular verbal language. Media language also has denotative meaning, which simply means the literal meaning of the media that is being presented to you, and the connotative meaning, or the various interpretations that that particular media form suggests to the audience, which are often associated with culture, beliefs, values, etc. So, meaning these interpretations could differ depending on the context and, most importantly, depending on the personality, the background, the culture of the person consuming that particular media format. Let us now go to the different aspects of media language, which include media codes, conventions, and messages. Media codes are simply described as the tools that are used to construct or suggest meaning in media forms and product that have a commonly established meaning to the target audience. In short, media codes are tools that already have a set meaning. The producer of the media format and the consumers of that media product already have a shared understanding of these things, of these tools. What do these tools represent? What do these tools mean? There are three major types of media codes. The first one is technical code, symbolic codes, and the written codes. Let's talk about them one at a time. Technical codes refer to media codes that are specific to a particular format or form alone. So take for example, when you are watching movies, you probably would be looking at the characters or the scenes presented in the movies or in the television shows in different angles. High angle shots usually are used when the producers of that media format or product want to imply a challenge, for example. On the other hand, low-angle shots often imply strength, superiority over a particular object, a particular situation. Camera shots are also considered to be examples of technical codes. Close-up shots, for examples, allow or give emphasis to certain characters, certain situations, or certain images presented in media. Wherein extreme close-up shots usually zoom in on specific body parts such as the eyes, the skin, or a specific object that is essential to that particular scene. Camera lighting and set lightings are also considered to be technical code. Another technical code used in media is sound, which is a very important because it builds up emotion, it builds up tension, it builds up feelings among the audience. The second type of media code is symbolic codes, which basically is the meaning of the product that is not based on the product itself, but rather on the interpretation of the audience. So the meaning behind these codes are based on the audience or how the audience will interpret them. Some symbolic codes in media include the setting, the place and time where the story is happening. Even the color that is being used in media, for example, is very important because it could be symbolic of something. So take for example, you would notice that in horror movies, they would use more greens, more red, more darker colors because it represents the feeling, the tension, and the horror, the scary aspect of the film. Iconic symbols integrated into scenes, into character development could also be considered as symbolic codes in media. So take for example, in the first picture, you would see that behind the characters, you would see the Nazi symbol. So this could be representative of the setting when this particular movie is taking place or this particular scene is taking place. Another one is the Mockingjay in the Hunger Games, which represents the struggle of the characters and their rise from social and systemic abuse. Language could also be considered as a symbolic code. You would notice that different actors would often use different accents when they are portraying different characters because it's representative of who those characters are or who the characters they're playing are. Clothing could also be considered as a symbolic code in media. So, for example, if a character in a movie or in a television show suddenly changes their style of clothing, then meaning there is also a change in their personality or in their lifestyle. Actions of the characters could also be symbolic codes in media. Another symbolic code in media is what movie producers or filmmakers would refer to as mise en scène. This is simply the set in which the story takes place. So in a set, in a particular movie set where they are trying to film this particular scene, the characters and the props and other aspects of the set itself are placed strategically because they are representative of specific meanings. Or the filmmakers simply want to convey a specific meaning through them. The last kind of media code is, of course, the written codes. These are formal written language used in creating a media product. Some examples of written codes in media include text in frame. If you would notice when you are watching the news, aside from the news reporters talking on the scene, you could also see several texts written or shown or flashed on the screen. In movies, for example, they would often close up to whenever the characters or the actors are writing something, or sometimes you would notice that when they are texting someone, some pop-up would appear on the screen that shows what exactly are they texting. Dialogue is also a very important written code because all movies, all television shows, even news reports actually start from written dialogues or written scripts. And a good script would often translate to a good production of media formats. Moving on, the second aspect of media language is media conventions. This term simply refers to the possible methods in which codes are organized in a product, based, of course, on a standard or a norm that acts as a rule governing behavior. It is something that has been widely accepted and widely understood. So, meaning these are things that people already follow. These are things that people already approve of. There are also three types of media convention. This includes form conventions, story conventions, and genre convention. Form conventions are described as the ways in which the types of media codes are expected to be arranged. How are they presented? How do they flow from one media code to another? Some examples of form conventions in media include title at the beginning and credits at the end. You would notice that when you are watching movies, more often than not, you could already see or it will already present to you the title of the movie at the very beginning of the movie, even before the movie has actually started or the story has actually started. And then usually towards the end of the movie, this is where you could see the credits or who worked on the movie, who are the actors, what characters are they playing, and so on and so forth. A very good example of a form convention is in Marvel movies. You would notice that when you are watching Marvel movies, even if the credits have already been presented to you at the end, you still do not get up from your seat in the cinema or you still do not turn off or stop the movie from playing. Why? Because it's been a widely accepted convention that when you are watching Marvel movies, there is an extra scene after the credits have been played. Another example of form convention in media is the tutorials that you can see, which explains the mechanics of how a particular game works. You would notice that at the very start, once you have started playing a game, at the very start, it would give you a run through of what to expect, how to do things, or provide an explanation of the gameplay. Next type of media convention is the story convention. It simply refers to the basic structures of the narratives. How is the story being told? How is the story being relayed to the audience? Some story conventions in media include, for example, especially here in the Philippines, at the very beginning, there is an underdog, and you know that towards the end of the movie, the underdog will rise up and become very successful. Another good example of story convention is when you are watching romantic movies and you know that the two main characters see eye to eye, that could mean love at first sight. Similarly, in murder mystery movies, you would notice that the story would often flow from a small gathering or a gathering of people or characters, and then suddenly someone dies or something bad happens, and then all of these people would work together to try and solve the case. And then eventually you would find out that it's one of them who have done the dirty deed. The last type of media convention is genre convention, which is the common use of the elements of narratives, such as the characters, settings, or themes in a certain type of media. So it depends on the genre that is being presented by that media format or media product. Right now, you would notice that many movies, many television shows, when it's all about the end of the world or an apocalyptic scene, it would often include zombies. And zombies are often shown as flesh eating monsters. Another genre convention that is commonly used in media, especially when a movie or a television show is about high school or the high school life, you would notice that characters are often represented based on the group to which they belong in high school. There would be troublemakers, there would be the jocks or the athletes, there would be the popular girls, there would be nerds, there would be castaways, etc. Another media convention in the genre of school-based television shows and movies is the concept of the mean girls. So mean girls are often portrayed by actresses in which they represent their characters as popular, pretty, or beautiful. More often than not, they're blonde, they're rich, they're cheerleaders, but they are not good towards other students. They have a status to protect. In music, on the other hand, you would notice that for pop songs, there is constant repetition of lyrics, which actually makes pop songs popular and catchy. It is important to note, however, that in terms of media conventions, culture is very important in the way we interpret signs and codes. It is imperative that we understand that culture always determines the meaning a sign or code communicates. The interpretation of one group of people could be different from the interpretation of another. Let us now proceed to media messages. Media messages are simply pieces of information that are sent from a source to a receiver. These could be ideas that may arise from media contents. Each audience member brings to each media encounter a unique set of life experiences. Remember that we come from different backgrounds. We had different experiences growing up. We are of different ages, gender, education, cultural upbringing, etc., which, when applied to or combined with the text, may create unique interpretations. Here are some examples of media messages. Let's take a look at the Kardashian clan. You would notice that they are the queens of social media. They would constantly post about their lifestyle. They would show off their beautiful faces and their bodies through social media. And there has been a long-standing debate as to whether the Kardashian influence is actually beneficial to social media users. There have been instances, there have been reports and studies wherein they claim that the Kardashian clan are not promoting body positivity. It encourages social media users, particularly young girls, to tone their bodies down to the point that there could be too thin or even use excessive makeup or filter their faces and bodies even when presenting themselves in social media. So there are people who could actually take offense in these kinds of postings. Media languages also include knowing about the people involved in the production and the consumption of media and information. And this includes media producers, stakeholders, and audience. Media producers are simply described as the people engaged in the process of creating and putting together media content to make a finished media products. So they are the ones creating the media formats, the media products that we have. It is important that media producers possess the skill in assessing the media text, what they are presenting, and have a thorough understanding of the target product and the processes that go into creating them. It is not enough that just because you have an information and you want to relay it to people, you could already create a media product. As a media producer, you have to know what particular pieces of information must be presented, must be included in that media product, and how exactly are you going to present these pieces of information aligned to your intention. Some examples of media producers, of course, include journalists, writers, directors, recording artists, photographers, television hosts, cameramen, sound and linesmen, etc. Media stakeholders, on the other hand, are people or organizations that share the same interest or intentions. And because they share the same interest, they create a group. They create connections with other people that they have commonalities with in terms of producing and consuming media. Here are some media stakeholders. We have television networks, movie and television festivals, groups and organizations of broadcasters, award giving bodies such as the Grammys, the Oscars, or the Academy Awards. You have cable TV networks or streaming services, streaming companies such as Netflix. Even the Nobel Prize is also considered a media stakeholder. Last but not the least, we have the media audience. Media audience refers to the group of consumers for whom a media message was constructed, as well as anyone else who is exposed to the message itself. Basically, these are all the people who watch, who listen, who read, who use different media formats and products. That ends our discussion for today. Here are my sources and references